Hey Robert, how you doing?
Welcome to NAMM.
Whoever does your PR did a great job, because I came and found you based on an email I received.
Oh.
I'm a big fan of the Optigon, and this is a beautiful thing that you're showing here, so perhaps you could just talk us through it.
Okay, well, as you may know, being a fan of the Optigon, that in the early 70s, Mattel created a market, an organ for the home market, and made several models, and it played these program discs, similar to the one on this machine, that contained 57 tracks of sounds, actually sound loops, and it was kind of the 1971 version of Band in a Box, where you'd have real recorded instruments and usually some sort of a rhythm section that was done on effects buttons. Let me open up this.
Yeah, it's kind of like the vinyl version of the Mellotron, isn't it? It's that sort of vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Mellotron had the IP sewn up for using magnetic tape to play back sounds, and then of course there was the precursor to that, the Chamberlain, and that's an interesting story in and of itself. But the Mellotron was done by Mattel, and they came out with several titles. It was not financially successful, and then a fellow from Moog Synthesizers, a man named David Van Covering, decided that he could use this technology to make a sister instrument that would go up against the Mellotron called the Orchestron. And they had about 8 different discs that had things like vocal choir and saxophone and a couple of different organ sounds. And that was sold to a lot of the progressive bands in the 70s. Jethro Tull had one, Patrick Moraz used it on Relayer, a Yes album, and the band America, I'm told, had one, and of course everybody remembers Kraftwerk using violin and vocal choir on their radioactivity. And
so what I mean, this thing is, I mean, the original Optigon was kind of crummily made, wasn't it? It was like plastic and kind of, this looks like really beautiful. So what's going on here?
Okay, so having repaired several of the plastic ones over the years, and yes, they're very hard to repair, and you have to find a specialist to rebuild certain parts of it. I decided that, you know, I've been making the discs for 10 years now. I found out about it from P. Hicks' website and from books I read, and phicksoptigon.com website had frequently asked questions saying, you know, you can't get new discs anymore, but if you think you know how to do it, contact me. So I contacted him and I said, I bet I can.
So how do you? Are they printed on acetate? Is that what you're doing?
No, they're not printed. They're actually film. They're almost made in a similar fashion to the original ones. What they did originally is they had a Scully record cutting lathe that they outfitted with optical equipment, and then they would basically do one loop at a time on a master, and then make contact prints. Well, these days we have computer technology that is able to do it in a much more direct way. There's basically photo plotters that can do up to 16,000 dots per inch. And you send them a file, and they can print out an image that I create in software of tracks. P gives me wave files, you know, a bunch of loops that are exactly the same length as a wave file, usually 2 seconds long is the duration, but it can vary a little bit. And then I take these and make an image of it, and I add graphics and that sort of thing. Give it to a photo lab. They printed out a master from this photo plot. Make sure that they place a center hole exactly right in the middle, so there's no cross talk.
That's got to be
tough.
That's
tricky to do, but they have a method to do it. And then we usually make a test disc, and if it sounds good to us, we'll go and make a master, and then they contact print the masters, and we cut them out, put them in sleeves, we do record albums, jackets. This is what and sell them on Optigon.com.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So
now we have
a player. This is really lovely.
And so this has been in development. It's been kind of a skunkworks behind the scenes project at Quilter Labs. But finally, you know, last year I showed a prototype at NAMM, and now this year is more of an advanced prototype that's good enough to sell. So we're taking a list of names of people who want them. It's pricey, but I'm using, you know, expensive components.
Bespoke stuff,
Yeah, it's all machined. machine knobs, machined cover plates and that sort of thing. A very precision stepper motor that has, it's the world's only 800 stepper motor, and then I micro step it 16 times, so it's driven with a clock frequency of 6,400 hertz.
I have a feeling that you're a man who likes to do things right. Okay,
yeah. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on this and using the best equipment. I'm using anti-vandal switches. These are switches that ATM machines and such use, and you can hit them with a sledgehammer and they'll still work.
So how does it? It's got MIDI on it, right? Okay.
Yeah. So this is basically a MIDI playback instrument, and I can control. There's several. Of course, MIDI has several different types of events that happens, and I'm trying to make use of as many as I can for people who want to do creative things with it. So. I've assigned a key on the keyboard to do reverse, and I can go forward and reverse on the disc. I can start and stop it. I can use the pitch wheel to change the speed.
I guess with a stepper motor, you could get some quite.
Well, it's computer controlled. I can be very precise. I can stop on a dime, and I can.
Oh, come on, let's have a listen.
Yeah. So here's a disc that we did a while ago called the sitar disc, and we were compelled to do it because in the original music book that was sold with Optigons, they say how to play piano, guitar, banjo, etc., and sitar. And they never came out with a sitar disc.
So now we got one.
So now we were compelled to do one, so we've done one. And
so you recorded the sitar yourself?
We hired musicians.
Oh, wow, awesome.
And got them into a studio, and P, who was the music director, coordinated all of this.
Oh, okay.
So what we decided to do, instead of merely playing notes of a sitar, we have sitar riffs that you can pick from. So you can play the sitar and then play another loop, and then mainly go along, and then we have the tablas on the chord buttons.
These are pan hard left and right, yeah.
Yeah, just like the original Optigon. And then we have the drones here.
That kind of stop, start thing on some of this. I'm really interested.
The fun part is the reverse, because then you can do that. You get kind of nice. Or you can stop and start it too.
Okay, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of like scratching. The discs are somewhat fragile, being made out of actual film with film emulsion, so you don't want to fingerprint them if you don't have to, but you don't have to. You can touch the weight if you want to kind of get some wavering. Or I like Servo Mode. It uses a phase lock loop to lock to these. We have these tiny little servo lines that they didn't, they're strobe lines. The original disc didn't have that. That's something we added. And it's got an analog phase lock loop that syncs to this and gives it a little bit of a waveriness, which is a nice organic sound. And then you can, when you play it, you can kind of like rub your finger or touch this and it'll give it a little boing to it. So that's kind of a fun little addition.
So, I guess remake it. Can you play it polyphonically? Is it possible to?
It's 100% polyphonic, so it does up to 60 tracks. Typically, Optigon discs had 57 tracks. But you can play all 57 notes simultaneously, and the signal chain is all analog. So the only thing that's really digital about it is controlling. There's analog switches that turn on and off.
And servo control would be digital.
And then I have a side chain of DSP effects that you can independently control, but you can turn them off if you want to be all analog and you don't want that, you can turn them off. But it's always fun to kind of add a little bit of like echo or something. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. That is absolutely beautiful, man. And how much is it? I'm not expecting it to be cheap.
We're going to sell it for $39.99.
Okay.
Which, it's much cheaper than something like a new Mellotron goes for. But
yeah, but it's a really. So you got MIDI in, a MIDI.
So here's the power supply. You have MIDI in and MIDI through. I'm running the MIDI through to our second one.
Oh, can you link them?
Oh yes. In fact,
boy.
I have an additional thing called sync in and out that turns this into a master and that a slave unit, and then I can do things like put this on. You won't be able to hear this because only this is going through the mic, but I can like change the speed of this, and so
they'll be phase locked.
It'll be so now this motor, whatever control signal I'm sending to this motor is also sending it to this motor. If I turn this on, right now it's stopped. You might be able to see it if I speed it up and slow it down. It's
Right,
doing the
that's
same
interesting.
thing.
So what would you use that for, maybe?
Well, the fun thing is, like, some of our discs, we have like 2 disc sets, like we have the string pack. So we have chamber strings and symphonic strings. You could put them both on there and sync them together and get a really lush string sound. You can put this in servo mode and kind of play with this, and it'll affect how that plays too. Even though I'm touching this, the motor is trying to
Because it's
correct.
reading back the control
Exactly.
signal.
So it's kind of, for the high rollers and big spenders, they can buy 2 of them and essentially have quadraphonic.
Wait a minute. But, I mean, there's an out on here, so would it not be possible to add a third or a fourth?
Well, you'd have to, the problem is if I added a third one and hooked it into this one, then this motor control would control that, which isn't really what you want.
What about splitting that signal?
Yeah, that's what you'd have to do, is split the signal, and then you could control.
So you could have a $1,200 Panoptigon system. I like $12,000.
$12,000.
Yeah, I like that. I just like the sound of that.
You know, the more you buy, the happier we all are.
Man, thank you so much. That's really interesting.
Okay.
Oh, wait. How do people get hold of this stuff? Where can they buy it?
Right now, if you go to Optigon.com and get a hold of P. Hicks, you can be added to the mailing list, and he sends out updates. Plus, he has information on the site. We're just starting to get Panoptigon.com off the ground. If you go to Panoptigon.com, you'll see a very short web page, and then.
But it's hand-based stuff. I mean, you're not going to be.
But it's also tied in with Quilter Labs, and Quilter Labs will be selling these, and you can get to so.
Brilliant.
We're building as we go.
Thank you very much.
No problem.